everybody, Dana Sparks, broker of Maximum One Greater Atlanta Realtors, and this week's contract tip has to do with a buyer and a seller negotiating repairs. Well, not negotiating repairs, I guess. So basically, if a buyer and a seller are under contract and a buyer has an independent home inspection done, or for whatever reason, and then there are some issues that the buyer wants the seller to address. Repairs, typically it has to do with repairs, but it could also be not repairs, but cosmetic issues. A lot of times a buyer and a seller, rather than negotiating for the seller to actually have those repairs completed or addressed prior to closing, a lot of times the buyer and the seller will just negotiate financially, and the seller will either reduce the sale price to the house or increase their contribution to the buyer's closing costs. So how, as an agent, do you write this up? Well, typically in the past, what you do is you'll just do a general amendment, and it would say new sale price to be X amount of dollars in lieu of repairs. Well, in our current market right now, it might be best for you to consider taking out that phrase in lieu of repairs and just do an amendment that says buyer and seller acknowledge that the new sale price is X amount of dollars, or buyer and seller agree that the seller to contribute a total to the buyer's a total closing cost contribution to the buyer of X amount of dollars, and remove that phrase in lieu of repairs. The issue is the majority of our lenders are telling us that they don't want to see that amendment that says in lieu of repairs. And again, it could be for cosmetic issues as well, that they are perfectly comfortable with the change in sale price or the additional closing cost contribution. And again, agents, y'all need to check on whatever else has been going on financially with respect to the contract, so that the you need to run any financial changes through the lender so that the seller's contribution to the buyer doesn't exceed the allowable amount. But anyway, so just do what they have agreed upon, and don't do that it's instead of something else. If you are writing a contract on the GAR contract forms, there is a specific amendment to reduce the sale price. You do not want to use that amendment in this specific situation, because that amendment specifically refers to an appraisal. This has nothing to do with an appraisal. This is just the buyer and the seller renegotiating the terms of the transaction. Now, the other thing to consider is if the buyer and the seller have already negotiated through repairs and if you have a fully executed amendment on an amendment to address concerns or amendment during buyer's right to terminate, and it does address specific repair items that the seller has agreed to perform, or cosmetic items they agree to replace, so forth and so on. And then later on throughout the course of events, the buyer and the seller negotiate to handle that financially, rather than the seller actually taking care of those issues. Again, you would still do another amendment, a general amendment that says what we've already talked about. Buyer and seller agree to a new sale price of X amount of dollars. But you listing agents, you need to protect your seller, because if the reason that the sale price is changing is a further negotiation that now at this point the seller is not going to do the repairs that they had agreed upon in an earlier amendment, you must address that amendment to not obligate the seller to do those repairs and accept the lower sale price. So again, you're still not going to do in lieu of repairs, but if you already have that fully executed amendment, you're going to do a general amendment. Buyer and seller agree to a new sale price of X amount of dollars. That would be number one. Number two, all parties agree Amendment A is hereby no longer part of this contract. So you just reference that that amendment is no longer part of the contract and taken out of the contract. So hope this helped you out. There's another issue about a seller giving a vendor, paying a vendor at closing. That you need to check with your lender. Lenders used to accept that kind of verbiage and that kind of proposal all the time. Then hardly any lender accepted it. And now it seems that what we're seeing is the majority of lenders are accepting verbiage for a seller to give a vendor of buyer's choice at closing X amount of dollars, for example, to replace the carpet or so forth and so on. But again, you need to check that with your specific lender and make sure that that is something acceptable to the underwriting department of that lender. Thank you guys so much for watching. Dana Sparks, broker of Maximum One Greater Atlanta Realtors, satisfying your needs with service, innovation, and education.